Good morning. I hear you, Mike. Welcome to the Big Easy, New Orleans. Or is it New Orleans? Or is it, as my buddy Earl says, Nolans? Yeah. Did anybody notice there's a party in the street this weekend? It's a little hard to sleep. We were supposed to be here 2 years ago, and we got COVIDed out. Last year we were in Orlando, but we had 500 people. Today we have 1,000 people in this room. And we have 55 states and territories represented in this room. That is fantastic. It is great to see so many familiar faces, but a whole lot of new faces as well. So if you don't know me, my name is Michael Crowder, and I'm from Washington State. Originally grew up in Indiana. My educational, vocational, and my volunteer activities have led me all over the nation, and it's part of what I do. It's conservation, wildlife science, ecology, producers. That's what it's all about. So as I was practicing this speech last night, there was a game on if you hadn't seen it, and it was hard to pay attention to the speech. The Chiefs pulled it out, Ryan. Field goal with 11 seconds left. So last time we were here, my Washington friends remembered that we didn't do so good. They should have run the ball. That's the Seahawks, by the way. So I want to start out by recognizing some guests and friends that are here this weekend. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack is with us today. Deputy Undersecretary Gloria Montano Green, Chief of NRCS Terry Cosby, Associate Chief Louis Aspey, Chief of Staff Alyssa Carney, former Chief of NRCS Bruce Knight, Leonard Jordan, and Kevin Norton are with us. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Director Martha Williams will be here tomorrow, and we have the honor of having General Henry here today, and it's a pleasure meeting you, sir. He will be our keynote speaker. This summer, our summer meeting was in Puerto Rico. Weather was great, and during the main session, we got on a conga line and a dance-off, male and female. And in Puerto Rico, they take their dancing very seriously, and it was a lot of fun. It was my second time being in Puerto Rico and the islands, and Carlos, I can't see out in the island, but thank you for the help down there. I came back from Puerto Rico with good memories and COVID, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I do want to say thank yous to all the supervisors of all the districts and state associations that are present here today. I want to thank those that have paid their NACD dues. Much of NACD's work has to be done with unrestricted dollars, which comes from our dues payments. Membership dollars continue to provide unrestricted funds to allow our staff to work for you. Those dollars gets boots on the ground in districts through our advocacy, education, and partnership work. And they directly translate into more district capacity through training and networking, increased conservation district staff, and more. I'll give you an example of how we are growing the value of your dollars. In fiscal year 2018, there were 5.28 pass-through dollars for every dollar received in dues. In 2019, it was 6.97. 2020 was $9.91, 2021 was $12.86, and in fiscal year 23 it was 13.25. So that ratio of dues payments in to grant dollars out went from $5.28 to 13.25 in 5 years, which is amazing. Great job, staff. NACD is continually striving to build district capacity and add leadership training, advocate for conservation, and reach out to those who have been underserved in the past. I want to thank you for our meeting sponsors here today. USDA, NRCS. Case IH, and specifically Patty Lardy and Clint Jenkins, thank you for all of your help. Bob Warner and Warner Ranches has been an eternal sponsor, and we love Bob dearly. Ducks Unlimited, AgriDrain, and Charlie Schaefer. Moreau Foundation, Earth Optics, John Deere, Pivot Bio, National Association of Conservation Agencies, Prince George's Solawana Conservation District, and Noble Research Institute. We can't do what we do here without our sponsors, and I do want to put a shout out to North Yakima Conservation District for their platinum dues on a yearly basis. Thank you, Mike, and all the other districts. I want to acknowledge the hard work that our CEO, Jeremy Peters, and his staff have accomplished to put this meeting together in a very successful year. We have a lot of new employees this year, and our list of employees are growing. Some of those employees have never been to this meeting before, and they're drinking from the fire hose right now, I assure you. I want to talk a little bit about our leadership growth, Next Generation Leadership Institute, and I would like to acknowledge NACD's work there, along with our sister agency, the National Conservation Foundation. At this meeting, we're finishing our second and starting our third cohort of NGLI. There have been and are 21 total members, 3 tribal members, 3 African American members, 1 Asian American, and 3 women. The youngest has been 33 and the oldest has been 60. So when we talk about next generation leadership, it's not just kids, it's your neighbors, it's your fellow farmers, it's the person sitting next to you. We already have multiple executive board members and likely 1 new officer from this first and second cohort. Could I invite those cohort members, all 3 cohort members, to stand up, please? That is your future leadership for NACD and USDA and on. Another example of promoting leadership as we participate in Syngenta's Ag Leadership at its best. Myself, Kim LaFleur, Ian Cunningham, Gary Blair, Mark Masters, and Barbara Blywise have participated in that. So I wanted to update a little bit on the highlights of my second year. I didn't, when I went in, Tim and I, he went out on Zoom and I went in on Zoom, so I got to speak in front of my computer in my office with Gretchen sitting next to me, and it was a little disappointing. So it's nice to be in a room with humans and talk about the good work we do. So 2022, it finally opened back up, and I visited 24 states and territories in 2022 alone. In 37 total states and 6 territories in the 6 years I've been an officer. That's the type of travel we do for advocacy for the states and territories. And it's not just me, it's all of that, all of the executive board and staff. We do a lot of outreach and make sure that we hear your voices and we can pull that back to DC. We also penned multiple op-eds and published in national forums. We did open mic, an interview with AgriPulse with Jeff Nally. We conducted many radio and TV interviews, lots of interviews in print. I was able to testify for the House Ag Committee twice last year, and it was a great honor. In May, I testified virtually on behalf of NACD at a hearing entitled Supporting Careers in Conservation, Workforce Training, Education, and Job Opportunities. I testified that NACD works with an Envirothon, 25,000 high school students across the US and Canada. We also participate in Ag Futures of America with Manners, Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. NRCS and the Forest Service, we host the Sustainability Institute, a workshop that provides students with important professional development and pathways to conservation careers. Our conservation workforce plays a critical role in achieving the goals and providing producers with the responses and assistance necessary to implement effective conservation practices. It is important to know that producers are the front line of ensuring global food security and protecting natural resources at the same time. NACD continually asks Congress to include at least $1.2 billion for NRCS's conservation operations budget, and we will continue to do that. This funding allows USDA to hire staff, better administer conservation programs, and provide critical technical assistance. In September, I testified in person in DC for a hearing entitled A 2022 Review of the Farm Bill, Stakeholder Perspectives on Title II Conservation Programs. There was one message NACD wanted the committee to hear, and there was one main takeaway. It was voluntary, locally led, incentive-based conservation works. All groups in attendance testifying on Title II were in general agreement that more boots on the ground are needed. I repeated the message that direct hire authority and conservation technical assistance are vital to the success of the Farm Bill and new grant dollars that are in the works from Congress. And on a side note, I had the NGLI cohort as my own cheering group and pep session sitting behind me, and it was really great. So I thank you again for that. This year I was reappointed to represent NACD to the Environmental Protection Agency's Farm, Ranch, and Rural Community Committee. During the previous administration, I was assigned to the Water Subcommittee. This subcommittee discussed the needs for ag for a clearer definition of WOTUS, among many other issues. The Water Subcommittee agreed on points for a final report, then sent that report to the whole committee and then along to the administrator for consideration. Under the current administration, the FRRCC is charged with considering how EPA's tools and programs can best support and advance the U.S. agriculture sector climate mitigation and adaptation goals. Rod Snyder is the ag advisor for EPA, and he is very familiar with NACD through his work with Field to Market and Jeremy Peters. I'm excited to work with EPA and the new committee on climate goals and feel I can bring this voice from this room to EPA. So hopefully we can get a little bug in the ear there. I recently was appointed to be a member of Biden administration's new Hunting and Wildlife Conservation Council. This group of sportsmen and women will provide USDA and the Department of Interior with insights on how they can strengthen wildlife conservation, expand recreational access, and promote rural economic development. I represent all agriculture on this council. Ultimately, our recommendations will go to the Secretary of Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture for review. And I can say at this point, I will be very involved with private lands conservation issues, namely Farm Bill conservation issues on the council. Also in 2022, we had an amazing trip to the Pacific Island Association. Last June, NACD and NRCS met with producers and partners throughout the Pacific Island Association. We visited Guam, Palau, Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, and the islands of Saipan, Tinia, and Rota. In all the locations, we met with producers in agroforestry, farming, cattle grazing, piggeries, farmers markets, and invasive species. We talked a lot about invasive species on the islands and how they are affecting not only agriculture, but the habitat on the islands. Some of the issues were feral pigs, coconut rhinoceros beetle, little fire ants, and brown tree snakes. It's very similar to the Hawaiian Islands with the axis deer and the feral hogs. We met with local elected leaders, the governor of Guam, acting governor of CNMI, staff to the vice president of Palau, and the mayors of islands of Tinian and Rota. We also had a session with local partners, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, APHIS, NOAA, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Department of Ag in Guam, EPA, and Historical Preservation Office. So we were trying to bring the national voice to bring partners together on the islands. We also met with DOD and REPI, Readiness and Environmental Protection and Integration. We've been so pleased to strengthen our partnership with DOD over the last several years. They have been an incredible sponsor of conservation, food security, and conservation districts. They recognize that landscape-scale conservation cannot be achieved without local landowner buy-in and cooperation. The locally led model is key to achieving their goals as well as ours. Just this weekend, I talked to the senator and former acting governor of CNMI regarding issues that we met with on the island of Tinian, and we'll be furthering up conversations and looking forward to working with the Pacific Island Association and JB in the coming months and years. We also visited American Virgin Islands. We're working with their districts and their Department of Agriculture on the island, and at this point we have brought in 3 board members and 3 members that are being appointed now. So we're bringing back the districts in American Virgin Islands. We worked a lot on grants to districts, state association, and tribes. Jeremy will be telling you next about NACD's very successful work on receiving grant dollars to districts and producers. Infrastructure, Inflation Reduction Act, Climate Smart grants, technical assistance grants, urban grants, and FRENA NACD mini grants. One other thing that was really neat for 2022 was I was able to attend the State of the Union Tuesday. My Congressman Dan Newhouse invited, and I was able to meet with G.T. Thompson, the chair of the House Ag Committee, and others. Met with Congressman Pelosi and McCarthy, so it was an interesting night. Never been around that before, so it was very cool. And as a policy nerd, it was wonderful to see the House, the Senate, judges, the generals, POTUS, everything all at one place. So I want to give it just a little bit of update of the priorities that I had as coming in. Climate change was the issue, number one issue. And to address that, we had the Climate Action Task Force. I asked Tim Palmer to chair, our immediate past president. We had Laura Wood Peterson, former NACD legislative director and now LWP Consulting. She helped us with that. This task force not only heard representation of NACD leadership from each region, but had experts, advisors from EPA, NRCS, county governments, NASCA, tribal leaders, tribal organizations, DU, RC&Ds. So the point was to bring all groups together. And that's a model that Kim is going forward in the future to make sure it's not just our committee members in our districts, but we're hearing voices from all around. My second priority was food security and insecurity. Food security is national security. COVID, supply chains, and the war in Ukraine have definitely showed us that there are issues there. My third priority was equality and social justice. We in the ag community have been painted with a broad brush. Ag has to be proactive in outreach to underrepresented demographics. We must help get producers of color, tribal members, island populations, and other historically underserved populations involved and make them feel welcome. Our President-elect Kim LaFleur chaired a DEI special committee, and we brought in Dr. Thomas Easley, and he is helping us with the DE audit and coming back to us with recommendations from an outside point of view. We have TA grants with tribal and urban districts, and we have TA grants from 50 states and 7 U.S. territories. So we have boots in the ground everywhere. We have tribal outreach. We work with tribal conservation districts, Indian Nation Conservation Alliance, Intertribal Ag Council, Alaska Village Initiative, tribal nations, and tribal members. So the issues that I wanted to tackle during my presidency was I wanted to clean up the policy book task force, and I want to thank everybody in this room that worked on that, because that was a pretty heavy lift. We had a 119-page policy book when we came in. We're coming out with a much cleaner version that will be up to date and up to standard as we go forward. And I thank Larry Davis and others for working on that. I had a Pacific Island Special Committee that I originally had Roland Catagua chair. Roland had some health issues, and Michael Uggan from Guam helped us with that, and I very much appreciate that, Michael. We have reached out to islands, and we had very low participation from the outer Pacific Islands. We had Guam and Hawaii that participated, but we're bringing in those other islands, and I'm looking forward to continuing that work with you, Michael. We had an aquifer and groundwater task force. Mark Masters is going to be giving us an update on his work on that. They held 10 groundwater task force virtual meetings and approved 25 edits to the NACD policy book regarding groundwater. One of my most important issues is increasing and strengthening partnerships. Number one being the NRCS, which is our oldest and strongest partnership, especially Terry Cosby. He was the dean of the state cons, and now he's chief, so he understands the agency, he knows districts, and we appreciate that camaraderie that we have, and we look forward to working with him. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we're signing an MOU tomorrow. We've worked with Ducks Unlimited, National Wild Turkey Federation, EPA, Sand County Foundation, Manners, Ag Futures of America, tribes, and tribal organizations. So one other thing that I wanted to mention is our spring fly-in. That's where usually more than 150 district representatives visit Capitol Hill and their representatives to support locally led conservation. This year we will meet on March 22nd and 23rd. NACD supplies one-pagers on legislative priorities and hot-button issues. This grassroots outreach is so vitally important for what we do. These meetings are important to develop relationships and members with staffers and the members themselves. You can't just show up once a year and say, hi, I'm here. You have to build that relationship in DC and at home. So please consider coming to that and bring in your district manager, your state conservationist, your executive boards, everybody to DC. So this is a Farm Bill year. The Farm Bill process has certainly begun in Washington, D.C. NACD will again play a leading role and expect to be a strong voice for conservation. We will continue our leadership role in education of the conservation delivery system and the importance of it into delivering Farm Bill conservation programs. We are certainly working with the staff and of the chairs and ranking members of both House and Senate. There are several new members of the Ag Committee this year, and we are hoping to educate them and bring them up to speed. Our Farm Bill Task Force first met on March 21st of 2022, and I chaired that effort. I would like to acknowledge our government affairs team for the help on that and the task force. Since then, we've conducted more than a dozen meetings and discussed how USDA conservation programs are currently operating, reviewed policy changes, and discussed how to best support voluntary, locally led conservation. In December, the Farm Bill Task Force met with Congressional Ag Committee's staff and USDA leaders to discuss efforts going forward. And just yesterday, we passed our Farm Bill request. So, in closing, I believe NACD is in a strong place. We are financially strong thanks to dues payments and grant services. We have more staff to be able to serve districts. We administer more grants to help with TA, leadership, and outreach. We continue to increase our partnerships. NACD is the boots on the ground, truly. We have outreach to all 50 states and all U.S. territories. For all you district folks, reach out to your state conservationist and talk about issues and resource concerns. Be involved in your local work group. State conservationist and NRCS folks, use those local work groups. We all must communicate. We all have to talk about the issues in your own states. We have to partner to be successful in delivering these grant dollars that are coming down from the Farm Bill, IRA, and climate smart grants. This is time to deliver. And districts, don't just think that everything you do will be paid for and no other groups are gunning for those dollars in your book of business. I promise you they are. Districts must shine now and deliver on what we have preached for decades. We can and we will. Never forget that all of what we do is the producers and ultimately is putting conservation on the ground. NACD will continue to increase our influence on policy and legislation over the next year with this Farm Bill work. And we're here to help all of you, all of the districts, state partners, everybody, and we appreciate that. And it has been an honor and a pleasure to be your president, and I thank you for everything.